What is up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja. And the last week I've been playing a ton of A Plague Tale Requiem, which, side note, I didn't know this about myself, but I really struggle to say that word, so I apologize in advance. But like I said, basically any free time I've had in the last week, I've been playing this game, and boy do I have some thoughts. So without further ado, let's rock. A Plague Tale Requiem is a sequel to the 2019 surprising hit A Plague Tale Innocence, developed by French studio Abasso Studio. It is a third-person stealth game set in southern France during the plague that follows sister and brother Amicia and Hugo, who must race to find a cure for Hugo's condition that allows him to control the plague-carrying rats. And I loved the original game. It scratched an itch I didn't know I had. And what's great about Requiem is it's kind of the perfect type of sequel, in my opinion. It's not a perfect game by any means, and we'll get to my gripes here in a little bit. But what I want for my sequels are, I enjoyed the original game. If I'm playing your sequel, I probably liked the first game, or I wouldn't be playing the second one. So I want more of the first game. That's what I want. I do need some minor changes, but I don't want to have a ridiculous sequel. And I feel like developers tend to take what works in the first game and turn it up to 11. I don't want that. I want to be able to play the original game and the sequel back to back. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to replay A Plague Tale Innocence before I played this game, but I want to be able to play the two games back to back and it feel like the same game with just some escalation, some reasonable escalation. And that's what A Plague Tale Requiem feels like. It does tend to kind of get close to that ridiculous territory at some points in this game, but it feels like it does it in service of the game. So I've already played the entirety of A Plague Tale Innocence, and A Plague Tale Requiem is pretty similar. So it did get stale somewhat. And when it did feel like it was starting to get stale, they changed it up. And it felt more like a breath of fresh air, which I definitely appreciated. Unfortunately, that means that if you didn't like the original game, you're probably not going to have your mind changed by this game. But if you did enjoy the first game, I think you're going to be very, very happy with the sequel. And one of the many reasons I love the first game is the story. I love the idea of taking a historical event like the plague. I do have a history degree, so obviously I dig history, and using that event as the basis for a cool stealth game. But the real heart of these games is the bond between Amicia and Hugo, and that bond is strong in the sequel. It feels like this game went out of its way to add moments of levity between the two. There are a few times in this game where you're just exploring a market and just kind of hanging out and having a good time, and it made me feel like I was also building a bond with Hugo, which made me want to protect him even outside of the game just wants you to protect him. I felt like I was building that bond with him. Now, there are some side characters that are not as well developed as the main two. They kind of just add more gameplay than anything else, but the bond between the main characters are strong in this game as it was in the original game. And the biggest difference between the two games is the combat. So like I said, there are side characters that come and go as you progress in this game, and they all have their own special ability that switch up the gameplay. And there's literally a badass in this game that his special ability is just he fights dudes, and it's really fun because you can send him to fight guys, and it goes from a stealth game to a straight up action game for the small stretch that you're with this guy. But at its core, A Plague Tale Requiem is still a stealth game, and I'll be real honest with you, I struggled with the stealth very early on in this game, and I was getting very frustrated and very disappointed with this game because the first few chapters you have very limited equipment, and therefore this is just a puzzle game. A lot of times you get dropped in an area and you got to get from point A to point B, and in between is usually some guards or some rats, or sometimes both. And so you kind of have to jump between the safe areas, which depending on the area that you're in, it's either like long grass or campfires to help you either escape guards or rats. And so you have very limited equipment, so therefore you have very limited options. And a lot of the guards are very unpredictable in this game. And so I kind of felt like very early on, I found myself just kind of making sure I had a clear path to point B, which is usually just a door that you had to open and then you could lock behind you. And then I would just sprint to that door. And it didn't matter how many guards were chasing me because I knew I was just going to lock the door behind me. So it didn't matter. Once you started to progress in the game and you got past the first couple of chapters, you did get to start unlocking more equipment, and you could upgrade that equipment. So once you started doing that, it felt much more like the first game because I felt like I could actually solve the puzzle. But the first couple of chapters were definitely a grind in that sense. And how you upgrade your equipment is you have to gather pieces and tools. It feels very similar to like The Last of Us, where you gather all this material and then you take it to a workbench. You do have to upgrade at a workbench in A Plague Tale Requiem as well. So that's pretty standard, but I thought what was really interesting in this game is how you upgrade as a person, as a character. There is a skill tree, but it only upgrades based on how you play the game. So if you're really good at stealth, unlike me early on in this game, it automatically upgrades your stealth. It felt like the world tendency in Demon Souls, the way that you play the game affects how the game plays. And I think that's really interesting. It didn't quite take it as far as I would have liked. It doesn't feel like it affects the game as much as I would have liked, but I still think it's a really interesting way to upgrade your character. And as I was with the first game, I was very impressed with how good this game looks. It is a very vibrant world. The few times I did get to explore like the market or a town, I loved existing in this world, even though it could be depressing some of the time. Well, if we're being honest, it was depressing most of the time. But again, the few times I did get to explore, I was very impressed with how vibrant the world looked. I will say that I did have some minor issues, but they're more nitpicky than anything else. They're just simply like, when you would walk up or down stairs, sometimes your feet would clip through the stairs. Some of the cutscenes, the mouth moving didn't really line up with what they were actually saying. But again, those were minor issues that were completely overshadowed by the rest of the game that looked amazing. A Plague Tale Requiem nails the tone of the first game. The bond between Amicia and Hugo is as strong as ever. The puzzles are really cool once you get past the first few chapters and you have more equipment to play with. The side characters bring an interesting dynamic to the gameplay that kind of feels like a breath of fresh air. It looks amazing. So all in all, I was really impressed with this game, and out of 5 stars, I'd give A Plague Tale Requiem 4 stars. Well, there you have it, YouTube people. That is my Plague Tale Requiem review, and that's the last time I'm gonna say that word in my entire life. I struggled the entire video. If you did enjoy it, smash that like button, as the kids say. Consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you get notified anytime I post a video. I do post weekly gaming related videos, so if you like that type of content, definitely subscribe and ding that bell. But until next time, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy. And we were just talking, and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?